Today, we're continuing to read The Reality of the Rulers as we explore what I view as an extremely feminist book that was banned from the Bible. And this is going to be a really good one because in this one, we're going to look at the secret daughter of Eve revealed. Now, in the Bible, they mention Cain and Abel and Seth and, the sons of Adam and Eve, but the daughters aren't even mentioned by name. They just go, oh, and they had daughters too. But however, in this book that's banned from the Bible, this excellent gnostic text, once again known as The Reality of the Rulers or the Hypostasis of the Archons, we get to know one of Eve's daughters very, very well. And as we go along and continue to read, we're going to see that Nora, that's her name, plays an extremely pivotal role in that she challenges all these patriarchal figures like Noah and God and the rulers. She ends up burning down Noah's Ark. She defeats God and her offspring ends up becoming the saviors of humanity. Not only that, but we're going to look at this powerful role that Eve plays as well, where Eve is celebrated for eating from the tree of knowledge rather than condemned. And we're going to see that the serpent actually represents powerful feminine energy, not this evil satanic energy as it's portrayed in the Bible. So we're going to take a look at this. Again, this is a book that I really, really enjoy, and we're going to explore it in detail right now. So let's get started. Where we last left off with the creation of Adam. The rulers tried to make this imperfect copy. And so now we're talking about the creation of Eve. And as I said, remember, this is a very, very powerful book. I consider it to be a feminist book. Again, as I said, it's not perfect, but for the time it was written in, it's pretty awesome. We've already seen some very powerful feminine characters. And now we're going to look at Eve, who we're going to see is going to be a very pivotal feminine archetypal character in this unfolding story. So this is going to be very important as we go along because Eve plays a very powerful symbolic role as this divine feminine force. So the rulers consulted with each other. And remember, we can always consider the rulers and God, or the chief archon, Yaldabaoth, as being sort of representative of the patriarchy. Now, I'm not saying that that was meant when this book was written, but I'm saying that we can learn a lot and from it because the underlying parallels are just spot on. So keep this in mind. So we have the rulers consulted with each other, and they said, "Come, let us make a deep sleep fall over Adam," and he slept. Now, this deep sleep was a lack of gnosis. This is really important. Remember, for Gnostics, Gnosticism is highly symbolic. So when you read the Bible and they say, God had a deep sleep fall over Adam and he removed a rib from Adam and made woman out of it, those who follow mainstream Christianity, they take this literally. They think that it just means that God made a sleep fall over Adam and he literally took his rib and made a woman out of the magic rib bone. But for Gnostics, this is highly symbolic. So you read here is that they made a deep sleep fall over Adam and he slept. Now this deep sleep was a lack of gnosis. So for the Gnostics, gnosis means knowledge. That's why Gnostics are those who know. That's what to be a Gnostic means. And so the sleep for Adam represent a lack of knowledge or ignorance. So they cut his side open and extracted from it a living woman, his spirit. Then they patched him up with flesh where she had been, and in place of a spirit, he had only a mind. Now this might seem all, kind of confusing, but remember, like I said, for Gnostics, this is highly symbolic. So let's take a look at this and see what this means. They cut open his side and extracted from it a living woman, his spirit. What does that mean? They patched him up with flesh where she had been, and in place of a spirit, he had only a mind. So basically what's going on is that you have this being, and the rulers were worried about this being being too powerful. So what they did was they made a veil of ignorance fall over him, and then they extracted what they are referring to as a living woman, but it also says his spirit. So what basically this means, okay? So in place of his spirit, he had only a mind. In Gnosticism, male and female is kind of represented as different aspects of mind. You have male that just represents mind in general, and then the female represents epinoia, which means purposeful thought or self-reflective thought or intuition. And so it is that woman representing epinoia that allows one to achieve gnosis, because it is what allows one to know thyself, look within, and understand that one is divine. So the aspect of epinoia is represented by woman, and it is what is 100% necessary to achieve knowledge. Because basically, without it, you're just a zombie that's going to worship the false god. You're just going to be a slave to the earth. But with epinoia, purposeful thought, self-reflective thought, intentional thought, and intuition, you'll be able to look within and realize what you are. So remember, this is highly, highly symbolic. And again, I don't consider this book to be perfect, but for the time it was written in, you're going to see the very powerful place that it places on what they are symbolically referring to as woman. So the spiritual woman came to him and told him, "Arise, Adam." When he opened his eyes and saw her, he said, "I am alive because of you. So I name you Mother of the Living. You are my mother and my midwife, the woman through whom I was born." You see how much more powerful this is than mainstream Christianity, which says that, oh, women are lesser than men, and women must obey men and be silent and not teach or have any kind of authority over men. Men are the the patriarchal figure. You see the big difference here, where the spiritual woman is coming to Adam and telling Adam, "Arise." She is waking up Adam from his slumber of ignorance. That's what that means. When the spiritual woman, meaning the epinoia, is coming to Adam and telling Adam, "Arise," she's waking him up from his slumber of ignorance. When he opened his eyes, remember this is all symbolic, being able to see, he said, "I'm alive because of you. So I name you Mother of the Living. You are my mother, my midwife, the woman through whom I was born." So again, very powerful. So the rulers approached Adam and saw him talking to his partner. They became greatly agitated with lust for her, and they said, "Come, let us mate with her." They ran after her. So here's the idea. And remember, this every time you're going to remember when we talked about previously in the first part to this series, when the rulers looked up and saw that the feminine reflected in the waters, they desired it. And now they're looking at Eve. They're overcome with lust for Eve, and they want to rape her. And you're going to find this theme in this book over and over again, in that whenever the rulers encounter a powerful woman, what do they want to do? They want to both rape her and strip her of her power. That's the constant theme. And how much more accurate can you get than the patriarchal world that we live in today, where men both fear and desire women? They desire women, for their bodies, but they fear the power of women. So they are constantly placing women in a subservient role, but then wanting to use them for their own gratification or as tools to, say, sell products or what have you. So we have this very unbalanced world where women are both desired and feared. And this comes from a very unhealthy, fractured self from those who have not integrated their mirror self. This is what we talk about in Hyperianism. It's very important to integrate your mirror self, because if you start to engage in mirror projection and shadow projection, that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to have this both desire and fear at the same time. And the reason why this is because, look, what the mirror self is, it's your inner opposite. So we're talking a lot about gender, right? This whole book is about gender, but I want to be very, very clear that, as always, you guys know me, that we're using it as a tool. Really, gender is just a construct. It's a social construct. We all have elements of what you might call masculine or feminine. I don't really like talking about things in terms of gender, but sometimes it's helpful if we're talking about themes like patriarchy or feminism. We have to use these words. We're limited by our human language, and so it's a means to an end. But what happens is, if we're taking sort of the idea of the very typical conservative male, their mirror self contains within them their inner gender opposite that they haven't integrated. And so what happens is they both unconsciously hate it and desire it at the same time. They desire it because it's a part of themselves that they should integrate, but they hate it because the world constantly tells them that it's not acceptable. If you're a male, you cannot exhibit these feminine attributes. So they also hate it. And so this, when they don't integrate it, this results in mirror projection, in which they desire women because it is, instead of integrating it with themselves, they're looking for it externally, but they also brings up cognitive dissonance as well, because they are reminded of the aspect of themselves unconsciously that they have not integrated. So anyway, the whole point is that this story is perfect for representing this patriarchal world that we found ourselves in which women are both desired and subjugated simultaneously. We have men taking on the role of the rulers. It's a patriarchal world, so they are the rulers, that when they see women, they desire them, but they want to strip them of their power. So the rulers approached Adam and saw him talking to his partner. They became greatly agitated with lust for her, and they said, "Come, let us mate with her." And if we read another Gnostic gospel, the secret gospel of Adam, the same thing happens, in that God, the chief archon, the chief ruler, rapes Eve. So this is a common theme in Gnosticism, this defiling of woman by this chief patriarchal ruler. So they ran after her as she laughed at them for their stupidity and blindness. And this is what I love. This is what happens when women really embrace their power. And this is why this book is so empowering. Because if women don't put up with this bullshit, they embrace their power and stand up against the patriarchy, when men come running after them, what happens? They laugh at their stupidity and blindness. And I see this all the time. I love seeing it on Instagram or wherever, where women are starting to screenshot terrible DMs by men and putting them on blast and not putting up with it, and then everyone just laughs at how ridiculous they are. I love it. It's and this was written in what, around 300, the year 300, and they've already really encapsulated what we're still facing today in story form. So they ran after her as she laughed at them for their stupidity and blindness. When they caught her, she transformed into the tree of life, leaving behind only a shadow that looked like her physical form. The rulers befouled the shadow, raped the shadow. By defiling the body they had molded in their own image, they condemned themselves. So this is really cool. So do you see how, like, this awesome triumph that Eve has over these stupid blind rulers that just want to have sex with her? What she does, she laughs at them for their stupidity and blindness. And when they catch her, she becomes the tree of life and leaves behind just a shadow that looks like her physical form. The rulers don't know that. They still have sex with this shadow. And then by defiling the body that they molded in their own image, they condemn themselves. So they fuck themselves, basically. Because that's the whole thing, is that they tried to create this body for women, for woman, and they tried to, like, imprison her spirit. But woman, who wakes up, leaves the body and laughs at their stupidity as they destroy the thing that they made after their own image. So anyway, if you can't tell, I really like this book. I think it's great. I think it's real spot on. So now we move on to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And again, this is superb. So the female spirit, because remember we have the female spirit who left and all that. The female spirit now went into a snake and it became a teacher. And so that's the really cool thing about this is, again, in the Bible, God creates the tree of knowledge of good and evil and says, well, if you eat from the tree of knowledge, you'll surely die. And then the snake is equated with Satan. But in this book, the snake is, this is the female spirit went into the snake. And the snake was a teacher. And it began to teach Adam and Eve by saying to them, what did the rulers tell you? That you were to eat from every tree except for the tree of knowledge of good and evil? So they're basically saying, you know, and remember, this is all symbolic. So when it's saying that the female within the serpent taught Adam and Eve, remember, this represents epinoia, or self-reflective thought, or intuition, or purposeful thinking. And they're saying, and it's getting them to wake up by going, hey, think. The rulers tell you you can eat from everything except for the tree of knowledge? Like, come on. Think, use your thought, use your self-reflective thought, use your purposeful thinking. Realize that there's something fishy about that. Why can you eat from every tree except for the tree of knowledge? Don't just blindly go along with it. Wake up. Think about this. So Eve, the earthly Eve, for the spiritual Eve was now in the snake, replied, not only did they tell us not to eat from that tree, but to not even touch it, for they say the day we eat from it will be the day of our deaths. And so again, clearly the rulers and the chief ruler represents the God of the Bible, because this is, if you read the Bible, God says if you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you will die. And Eve is saying, well, the snake, as the spiritual woman, or epinoia, purposeful thinking, is saying, the snake, the teacher said, you will not die that way. They said that to you out of envy. Instead, your eyes will be opened and you will come to be like gods, recognizing good and evil. So powerful, so fucking powerful. And with that, the female spiritual teacher left the snake and it became a merely earthly thing once more. The fleshly woman plucked one of the fruits of the tree and ate it. She gave some to her husband, and both of those fleshly beings ate. They realized that they lacked gnosis and were gravely flawed. When they saw that they were lacking of spirit, they gathered fig leaves and tied them around their private parts. So, again, huge difference here. In the Bible, you have the condemnation of Eve and the equating the serpent as Satan, where here you have the serpent as a female liberator giving to humanity purposeful thought so that they may eat from the tree of knowledge, and Eve is celebrated for eating from the tree of life. Or, I'm sorry, the tree of knowledge. Huge difference, because remember, I know I read this quote so much, but it's such a powerful one. This quote is from the Bible. And listen again to how terrible it is. I know you guys have heard me do it a million times, but for those who are new here, this is a quote from the New Testament. A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet, because Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. But women will be saved through childbirth if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with propriety. So clearly different stories here, different ideas. And in this beautiful, awesome, feminist, gnostic story that was banned from the Bible, the woman/snake is seen as a teacher and a liberator, and Eve is celebrated for eating from the tree of knowledge. And you have Adam saying that Adam owes his life to the spirit of woman. That Adam only exists because of the spirit of woman. So, I mean, which version sounds better to you? It should be clear as day. So they ate from the tree, and then the chief ruler, who is the God of the Bible, the chief ruler came and cried, "Adam, where are you?" For he was unaware of what had happened. Adam answered, "I heard your voice, and because I was naked, I was afraid, so I hid." The chief ruler said, "Why were you hiding? You would only have done that if you had eaten from the single tree from which I told you not to eat. You have eaten from it." Adam said, "The woman you made for me gave me fruit from that tree, and I ate it." The conceited ruler cursed the woman. But the woman said, "I ate because the snake lied to me." The rulers turned to the snake and cursed it. They did not realize that they themselves had made the snake. The ruler's curse lay upon the snake from the day until the day when the perfect man was to come. So basically they cursed the snake instead of cursing the spiritual woman. The rulers then turned to Adam and his wife and banished them from the garden. By the way, when it says until the day when the perfect man was to come, they're talking about Jesus Christ. Now, as I said, this book is extremely forward-thinking for its time, but it's not perfect. You're still going to have Jesus Christ as a savior figure, but it's very, very different in Gnosticism. In Gnosticism, even Christ is sometimes seen as a vessel of Sophia or an emissary of Sophia, another divine feminine being, and saving is done in getting humanity to realize what they are, not in a being you have to worship. So there is that. But again, this is not perfect. I do want to make it clear it's not perfect, but for the time it was written in, it's pretty damn good. So the rulers then turned to Adam and his wife and banished them from the garden. They too lay under the ruler's curse. The rulers plunged them into the life of toil and distraction, so that they would become consumed with earthly tasks and unable to concern themselves with the matters of the Holy Spirit. And that's exactly what we found ourselves in today. Think about this world that we live in. This world that we live in constantly keeps you fighting to survive so that you are distracted and don't think about the things that will truly liberate you, so you don't look within and realize your true self. And that's why in Hyperianism we are so against the rich elite billionaire class, because they keep you as a slave in a 9-to-5 job, so you are constantly distracted and exhausted and don't have any time to be able to do any personal work and realize what this is, where this is, and why you're here, and to be able to step into your divinity and power. The goal of capitalism is to work you as hard as possible for as little money as possible, so that you only have enough energy to be able to stay alive and have sex. That's it. And the reason why? Stay alive because they need workers, and to have sex to produce more workers and more consumers. And this is at the heart of so many different things, especially even anti-abortion, what underlies anti-abortion and all that. Like they just want more workers and consumers. They don't give a fuck about life. If they gave a fuck about life, they would make the quality of life better. They would be looking for to increase people's quality, but they are not doing that. That's not that. Never do you see that. It is always for the purpose of making more money and giving the people the bare minimum that they need to survive, and so that they won't revolt, and so that they'll just keep procreating. The rulers plunged them into a life of toil and distraction. Distraction as well. That's why you're flooded with entertainment. How many times are you gonna, watch TikTok for 2 hours instead of looking within? And I get it, because looking within is hard work, and so you're dead tired at the end of the day. By the time you get home, sometimes you just want to just mindlessly zone out on TikTok or Netflix or something. I get it. I understand. But, it's just to realize that's all part of the plan, is to keep you exhausted and distracted so that you won't realize your divinity, so you won't realize your power, so that you won't stand up to the rulers. So now we talk about the children of Eve. After this, Eve bore a son by the rulers, Cain, who tilled the soil. Adam slept with his wife when she conceived again and bore Abel, who looked after flocks of sheep. So what's interesting here is that, so it said Eve bore a son by the rulers, meaning that this birth was the result of the rape of Eve, was Cain. And this is similar into, if we read the secret gospel of John. In the secret gospel of John, God rapes Eve, and Cain and Abel are the offspring that are the result of that violation of Eve. So Cain made a sacrifice to God from the crops of his fields, but Abel made a sacrifice from his lambs. God welcomed Abel's sacrifice, but he did not accept Cain's. Cain, fleshly man that he was, went after his brother Abel. And God asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain replied, "What am I, my brother's keeper?" God said to Cain, "Listen, the voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me. You have sinned with your mouth, and your sin will come back upon you. You will be reduced to a life of moaning and quivering on the ground, and anyone who puts you out of your misery will have 7 vengeances unleashed upon them." So Adam slept with his partner Eve. She conceived again and bore Seth. She said, "God has given me another son to make up for Abel." So Eve became pregnant once more and bore Nora. Now, this is really pivotal. We're going to go back and talk a little bit more about the role that the children of Adam and Eve play in Gnosticism and the unfolding of this Gnostic story. But here we have Eve becoming pregnant once more and giving birth to Nora. And finally, we have a name, Nora. And Nora means fire in Syriac. So it's a fiery soul that is born. And in the Bible, they don't even mention any names of the daughters of Adam and Eve. They'll mention the sons, Cain, Abel, Seth, but not the daughters. But here we have Nora. And Eve said, he has given me a virgin to be a helper for many generations of humankind. Nora is the virgin whom the rulers were unable to violate, and humankind was fruitful and multiplied. And we're going to see that Nora and her descendants become the saviors of mankind. And this is what's really cool about this is, so the reason why they call Nora a virgin is because the rulers were unable to violate Nora. And what this means is, yes, it has to do with, in the story, rape, but it also means on a symbolic level that they were unable to infect her. She was not going to submit to them. She did not submit. They were unable to make her submit. So that's what her being a virgin means, is that she was able to overcome the rulers, which we're going to see is a beautiful metaphor for overcoming, patriarchal forces, where, because the rulers were able to rape Eve, not her spiritual essence, but the physical form. Now, what's really interesting about this, okay? So in the Secret Gospel of John, which is another Gnostic gospel, we have God who violates Eve, and Cain and Abel are the result of this violation of Eve. But then Adam and Eve have Seth. So according to the Gnostic book, The Secret Gospel of John, Cain and Abel are a result of the violation of Eve. So it's not Adam and Eve, it's Eve and the evil god of the Bible that produced Cain and Abel. But according to the Gnostic gospel, Seth is a result of the union of Adam and Eve. And this represents symbolically through Seth, since it's the union of Adam and Eve, and remember, Adam and Eve represent sort of two divided parts of mind. Adam is just mind in general, and then Eve is self-reflective mind, so purposeful thought, epinoia, intuition. But they're split. And so through their union, the production of Seth, that represents the union of these split aspects of mind. So Seth has the potential to look within, realize his divinity, and then it's said that through Seth and his descendants, all his descendants also have this ability to look within and realize their divinity. So Seth and his descendants are looked at as sort of the saviors of humankind, because they're from this union of Adam and Eve. And this is considered Sethianism. This branch of Gnosticism is called Sethianism. For example, there was another branch of Gnosticism called the Cainites, and I did a video on that as well. And the Cainites were ones who actually venerated Cain. So you see you have these different Gnostics groups. Some venerated Cain. They were known as the Cainites. The Sethians venerated Seth. And what's interesting about this book that we're reading is that, from what I understand, this is considered a Sethian text, but I almost don't know if it should be considered so. It should almost be considered a Noraean text, because in this, yes, they mention Seth, but in this reading, it's Nora who is emphasized as the true union and the ultimate one who will overcome the rulers and whose descendants will be the savior of humankind. And so what I really like about this book is that it's not Cain or Abel or Seth. It is Nora, and it is through Nora that humanity will be awakened, and the one who will be able to overcome the rulers. And I think that's a beautiful story. I love that story. So it's a little odd to me that, it's still considered a Sethian text when the emphasis is not on Seth at all. Seth is mentioned, but the emphasis is on Nora, the fiery one who will overcome the rulers and ultimately lead to the saving of mankind. So here's what we're going to do. We finally have Nora introduced into the scene. And Nora is an amazing character. We're going to see her destroy all forms of, these patriarchal figures. We're going to see her stand up to Noah and burn down the ark. We're going to see her stand up to the rulers when the rulers attempt to rape her and be able to defeat God. And we're going to see her ultimately having a discussion with another feminine divinity known as Alalith, as Alalith and Nora then have a discussion about the future of the world and what will happen and with regard to her descendants helping the world wake up and realize their own inner divinity. So now we finally have Nora as the secret daughter of Eve introduced and coming on the scene. And I'm going to leave it there. Next time, we will get into the rest of the story, which is sort of the grand climax as Nora comes in with her fiery passion and overturns all of these, patriarchal themes, which is just going to be really awesome. But we're going to end it there because I'm trying to make these a little bit shorter because I want to keep them to at least 30 and 45 minutes so that people will more, be apt to watch the replays. Because if they're a few hours long, people usually don't. So we're going to leave it there. But make sure that you are there. It's going to be a really good one. It's going to be the finale, the end of the reality of the rulers as Nora comes on the scene and really demonstrates this feminine triumph over the evil ruling patriarchy. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports on Patreon, especially Cassidy, Alana, Renaissance Fairy, Michael, and Alan. Thank you guys so much. If you enjoy my work, if you've ever felt like you've got anything from my videos or learned something from them at all, consider supporting on Patreon. You help me out, I'll help you out, we help the world out. It's a feedback loop, and this enables me to continue creating. So it means a lot. And when you support on Patreon at any level, cheapest level's $5, you get access to our weekly secret live streams, our hidden Discord server, and a lot more. And if you support on tier 2 or higher on YouTube, you also get that as well. It means a lot. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.